Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another dark descent into the world of true horror. If you're new here, buckle up, because today we're diving into something genuinely bone-chilling. Real-life, terrifying stories that actually happened. These aren't just urban legends or creepypasta fiction. These are documented, verifiable, spine-tingling experiences told by the people who lived through them. And I've got to warn you, the last story in today's video is especially disturbing, so make sure you stick around. True horror always hits different, doesn't it? Because when something truly terrifying happens in real life, it stays with you. It lingers in your thoughts, in your dreams. It makes you glance over your shoulder just a little more often. That's the kind of fear we're talking about today. Before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 1 million subscribers, and every click gets us closer to building the biggest horror-loving family on YouTube. So thank you. Now, without further delay, let's unlock the door to some truly terrifying true horror stories, straight from the shadows of real life. Welcome to Spooky Tales. Story No. 1, The Ride That Could Have Killed Me. Our first story is a haunting near miss that sounds like it belongs in a thriller, but it's very real. It's titled, I Almost Gave a Serial Killer a Ride. This chilling account comes from someone whose father served in the Army for over 2 decades. After retiring, the family moved to a quiet, small town in central Florida. Looking for something to do, the father took up a part-time job at a local gas station. It was the kind of place where you'd expect nothing much to happen. Slow nights, familiar faces, and the occasional late-night drifter. The narrator, who had just turned 15 and proudly earned their learner's permit, would often drive their dad to and from work. Sometimes they'd hang out at the station, reading books and helping out with stocking coolers or manning the register. That is, as long as no beer or cigarettes were involved. It was a typical evening in 1990. The narrator was settled in their usual corner, a tattered novel in one hand, a Mountain Dew in the other, their legs kicked up on a nearby chair. They weren't expecting anything out of the ordinary, until something caught their eye. From beyond the large glass windows of the gas station, a woman emerged from the shadows of the I-75 interstate, walking alone up the driveway. Now, this was strange. You didn't see people walking along that stretch of road, especially not from that direction. Something about it immediately felt off. As she approached, the narrator got that feeling we all know, that gut-level dread that whispers, something isn't right. The woman entered the store, glancing around aimlessly. Her story, once she reached the counter, was that her car had broken down, and she needed a ride north to a town called Ocala. She claimed to be stranded, harmless enough on the surface, but there was something deeply unsettling about her presence. Her energy felt wrong. She didn't seem scared or worried. She seemed too calm, too calculated. The narrator's father politely told her that he couldn't leave his post and that he was working. Then she did something strange. She turned to the narrator and asked if they could give her a ride instead. What happened next still haunts the narrator as the woman turned her gaze away from the father and looked directly at them. The father made eye contact and shook his head sharply. A silent, urgent, No, this was deeply out of character for him. Normally, he was talkative and easygoing, but this time his tone was short, almost cold. He had a bad feeling. The narrator recalls something primal, instinctive. She cursed him out hard and then stormed out of the store, slamming the door so violently that it nearly shattered. The woman disappeared into the night, making her way back toward the highway. The narrator thought about her for a while afterward, but eventually moved on, until nearly a year later, their dad shouted from the living room one afternoon, "Son, get in here now." The narrator ran in to find his dad pointing at the TV, and on the screen was a mugshot. It was her, the same woman from the gas station, the woman they nearly gave a ride to. Her name? Eileen Wuornos, a name that would later go down in history as one of America's most infamous serial killers. She had murdered multiple men and was eventually convicted and executed. The realization hit like a truck. They had come within a split-second decision of becoming another name on her list. A different answer, a different reaction, and this story might never have been told. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, when something feels wrong, it's because it is wrong. Story No. 2. Someone was living in the shed. This next story takes us to a quiet rural home, the kind of place where neighbors are few and far between, where the silence at night is thick enough to feel like a blanket, and where nothing ever seems to happen, until something does. The storyteller was around 12 years old when it began. Their parents had recently moved to a small town in the Midwest, buying a modest home with a decent-sized backyard and a shed at the very back of the property. The shed was old but sturdy, the kind of structure that had clearly stood for decades, with sun-faded wood and rusted hinges that creaked whenever the wind blew just right. It started with small things, unnoticed at first. A slight drag mark in the dirt leading to the shed's side door. A padlock that looked just a little more scratched than before. The child figured it was probably nothing. Maybe their dad had gone in to get the mower and didn't lock it back properly. Then a few days later, the sound of something metallic falling from inside the shed startled them while playing outside. It was loud, abrupt, and followed by silence. Frozen in place, the child stared at the shed's door, but it didn't open. No one came out. Later that night, they mentioned it to their parents. Their dad shrugged it off, saying it was probably a rake falling or a squirrel. Nothing to worry about. The child wanted to believe that. They really did. But the feeling wouldn't leave them. That creeping, persistent unease. They began to notice that every so often, things in the yard would be slightly off. A garden spade moved from its usual place. Footprints, adult-sized, in the muddy patch beside the fence. Once their dog barked incessantly toward the shed for nearly an hour, hackles raised and growling low. When their father went to investigate, he found nothing, no one, but the dog refused to calm down until it was brought inside. Then one afternoon, the mother asked a strange question. "Did your father go out to the shed last night?" The child shook their head. They hadn't heard anyone go outside. She paused, almost as if reconsidering whether to continue. "I could have sworn I saw the light on back there around midnight, But when I looked again, it was off. At this point, the child couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not constantly, but now and then, when they played alone in the backyard or sat on the back porch. There was a sensation of eyes, not the obvious gaze of a person looking through a window, but the darker, colder feeling of being observed from hiding. Then came the night that confirmed it all. Around 2:30 in the morning, the child woke up needing a drink of water. On their way back from the kitchen, they glanced out the back window, just out of habit, and saw it, the faint orange glow of a lighter flicking to life inside the shed. Just for a second, enough to illuminate the silhouette of a figure crouched low to the ground. Then darkness. They froze, completely paralyzed. Not a sound in the house. The TV was off. No one else was awake. They backed away from the window slowly and crawled into bed, pulling the covers over their head. They didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, they told their parents everything. The lighter, the figure, the noises, the dog. Their dad didn't say much, just nodded once and went to the shed. When he returned, his face was pale, jaw clenched. Inside, he had found signs that someone had been living there. An old blanket, fast food wrappers, a small pile of cigarette butts, and worst of all, a knife tucked beneath a tattered pillow. They called the police immediately. The authorities searched the property and confirmed that someone had likely been squatting in the shed for several weeks. How they had managed to sneak in and out without being noticed was anyone's guess. The only entry was the front, and the door had been locked, or so they thought. Apparently, the lock had been tampered with, carefully pried open just enough to relatch without suspicion. There were signs that the person had been watching the family, possibly slipping out at night to steal food or roam the backyard. They never caught the person. After that, the family replaced the shed's lock with a reinforced deadbolt and installed motion-detecting floodlights. But the feeling never fully went away. The child often wonders, how long had the stranger been living there? What had they seen? And what might have happened if that night, the night the lighter flicked on, they decided to come into the house instead? Story No. 3. The man across the street wasn't real. The storyteller begins this next memory by saying something that immediately chilled me. I don't think my neighbor was human. And no, this isn't a story about vampires or werewolves or some shadowy cryptid. It's worse than that, because what follows is a slow, quiet descent into uncertainty, a drip of weirdness, not a flood, the kind that warps your reality until you question everything, especially your own mind. They were around 14 when the man across the street moved in. His name, or at least the one he gave, was Mr. Albert. He rented the house directly across from theirs, a small gray place that had been vacant for a while. There was nothing remarkable about him at first. Mid-50s, always wore a navy jacket and black slacks, clean-shaven, quiet. The only thing off about him, the storyteller recalls, was his routine. Every single morning, without fail, at exactly 5 a.m., he would step outside onto his porch and just stand there, not watering plants, not getting the mail, just standing, motionless, hands by his side, staring straight ahead. At first, it was mildly strange. Then it became unsettling, because no matter what the weather was, rain, snow, freezing wind, he was there. Always the same clothes, always the same blank stare. No blinking, just there. Then more things started to seem off. The kids in the neighborhood stopped riding bikes near his house. One of them swore they saw Mr. Albert watching them from behind the blinds, not peeking, not moving them aside, just already there, eyes locked, face too still. Another boy said he waved once, just to be polite, and the man waved back, but the movement was stiff, robotic, as if someone was mimicking a wave without understanding what it meant. His smile didn't touch his eyes. Soon, even the adults began to notice. The storyteller's dad mentioned in passing that Mr. Albert never seemed to leave the house. Not for groceries, not for gas. I've never seen him in a car. Has he even gotten a single delivery? His mom added that she tried to say hello one morning, and the man didn't respond at all. Didn't turn, didn't nod, just kept staring straight ahead. One night, out of pure curiosity, and maybe a little fear, the storyteller decided to stay up and keep watch from their bedroom window, which faced Mr. Albert's house. Around 2 a.m., they noticed the upstairs light flicker on. The curtain moved slightly, and then they saw him standing at the window in the dark, staring directly at their house. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part was that the angle of the window meant Mr. Albert would have had to be standing on a chair, pressed against the glass, to be visible like that. Just standing, watching, like he'd been there for hours. The storyteller ducked under the window and didn't sleep the rest of the night. From there, things escalated. Their dog refused to go outside after sunset. It would growl at the front door, ears flat, tail stiff. The air in the house felt heavier, colder. The light across the street seemed to flicker at the same times every night. 11:47 p.m. Precisely. One time, they swear they saw two shadows move past the window when Mr. Albert lived alone. And then, one night, the police came. 3 cruisers. Lights off. Quiet knock on Mr. Albert's door. The storyteller and their family watched from the living room window, breath held. After several minutes, one officer knocked again. Then another circled to the back door. Finally, they broke in. No one was inside. No furniture. No food. No clothes. The house was completely empty, as if no one had lived there for years. And yet, and here's where the story gets deeply disturbing, the landlord swore the rent had been paid every month, in cash, in person, signed under the name Albert H. Danner. Security camera footage from nearby street corners showed no one coming or going. Not ever. The man had simply vanished. The house was investigated, but nothing criminal was found. Eventually, the landlord cleaned it up and listed it again, but no one ever moved back in. The neighbors wouldn't allow it. Too many of them had seen things they couldn't explain. And the storyteller? They still dream about that face at the window, about the way he stood on the porch every morning, like he was waiting for something, or maybe marking something. They say that sometimes When they're back in town visiting, they wake up at 5 a.m. out of nowhere, and just for a moment, they feel watched. Story No. 4. They warned us not to go to Blackwood Camp. This story starts with the kind of tale most of us remember from childhood. A camp legend, shared in whispers after lights out, flashlight under the chin. But this one didn't fade as the years passed. If anything, it got worse. The storyteller says they were part of a summer youth program when they were 16, rural Pennsylvania, forested hills, old cabins. Every year, the program used Camp Hollow Pine, except this one year, due to construction, they were moved to a lesser-known place, Blackwood Camp. The counselors looked nervous the whole drive. It was supposed to be temporary, just 3 days. But the storyteller remembers the second they arrived, something felt wrong. Blackwood Camp was built like a mirror image of the usual one. Same layout, same bunk numbers, even the same fire pit. But the buildings looked older, darker, like they had been abandoned for decades, not just unused. That night, the staff gave them a strange warning before bed. No stories around the fire. No wandering after 10 p.m. And under no circumstances were they to go near cabin 3. Of course, kids being kids. That was like painting a neon sign. This is where the horror is. The whispers started quickly. Cabin 3 is where the girl died. They found something buried under it. It only appears at night. But nobody knew what was true, not even the counselors. When asked, they just gave tight smiles and said, "Don't ask about cabin 3. We're not even supposed to be here." The storyteller didn't believe in ghosts, but they did believe in weird people, and in that feeling of your stomach tightening, even when your brain tells you everything's fine. On the second night, just past lights out, a group of 4 boys decided to sneak out. The storyteller, half asleep, watched them tiptoe past the bunk's window. They were laughing, flashlights low, heading toward cabin 3. And then, nothing. No screams, no running, just silence until morning. That's when people realized one of them, Tyler M., was missing. The counselors went pale. They gathered everyone in the main lodge and tried to stay calm. "He's probably gone for a walk," they said. "Let's not panic." But you could feel it. They knew something had happened. Police were called. A search began. Cabin 3 was locked, chained, and nailed shut from the outside. The ranger station said no one had used the camp since 1987, when apparently a camper had gone missing near that very same cabin. His body was never found. The program was relocated the following year. Blackwood was supposed to be off limits, and yet here they were. What happened next scarred everyone. Around 3:30 p.m., one of the search volunteers screamed. Everyone ran toward the edge of the woods, beyond the marked boundary. There, about 20 feet into the trees, sat Tyler's flashlight, standing upright in the middle of a clearing, glowing softly, though the batteries had long since died. Near it, pressed into the moss, were bare human footprints, small ones, like a child's. But Tyler was 6'1", a full-grown teen. No prints led away. It was like he'd walked into the clearing and been absorbed. The area was searched for hours. Drones, dogs, heat sensors, nothing, not even his scent. The storyteller says they left that night. The whole program was canceled, and parents were told it was due to a wild animal threat. But everyone who was there knew the truth. Cabin 3 took him. Here's the worst part. 2 years later, the storyteller was scrolling through Facebook and saw a photo someone had posted from a ghost tour in rural PA. It showed an abandoned camp in the woods, a blurry night shot. But in the background, through the boarded window of a rotted building, you could clearly see a boy's face, pale, sunken eyes, wearing a camp shirt from their program. It was Tyler, and underneath, in the comments, someone wrote, "That's cabin 3. Locals say if you knock 3 times on the door, someone knocks back." The storyteller never clicked the post again, but they still wonder what would have happened if they had knocked back. They never went to camp again. So the next time you're alone at night and you feel something watching, just remember, not all horror stories are fiction. Some are real and some might still be happening. Thank you for watching Spooky Tales, where the darkest truths are whispered in the shadows. Don't forget to like, share, and follow if you're brave enough.